Okay, how nice. Welcome to Meira and to Aryeh. Well, what a nice surprise. I had a whole speech prepared. The speech has been canceled for now. So we have Meira. I can't see on the camera here, but Meira and Aryeh. I guess I can turn around for 1 second. There we go. Okay, so everyone can see who's here. And Katie is watching, and Yael is there, and of course my mother who watches every week, Shalom Aleichem, and to David, and Shena Bat Sheva, and Avital, and everybody that joins us. And I hope I didn't forget anyone, but if I did, I apologize. And we also have sushi, a lot of sushi today. Like I was like, oh, okay, I'll have one piece. I think I ate like 5. It was just like, wow, I love sushi. Okay, so we're learning from the Likutey Moharan Lesson 30, Lamed. And it's actually quite amazing that Mihura shows up today, because I'm going to give like a whole summary of how we got to where we are at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was wondering even how much of the lesson we'll actually get to, because the lesson's getting a little dense. It's a very heavy lesson. So I figured, okay, we need a review, and how appropriate that you're here. Okay, so before we start, I'm going to give a little review. We started off with this Kabbalistic idea, this very strange thing of how do you harvest a garden of knives. That's what he started off with, and he said with the horn of a donkey. And then the question was, do donkeys have horns? And then the Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanina and the elders of Athens got together and asked each other these mystical questions. Bring me an egg and tell me if it's from a brown or from a black chicken or a white chicken. Bring me some feta cheese and tell me if it's from a black goat or a white goat. And then Rabbi Nachman says, by the time we finish this, you'll understand the hidden meaning in this passage. So we still don't understand the hidden meaning. We've gone into the only way that you can understand Hashem is through speech, and you need a teacher that's able to bring down these lofty concepts into practical language. So it has to be a great teacher, and the teacher has to be somebody that hopefully actually has a lot of money but is not connected to money. And that was a big concept here. And he brought in the Avot, Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Moshe. All of them were wealthy, and all of them were on a very high spiritual level. And essentially what he was saying, he says, you have to be soneh beta, which means hating money for money's sake. But to really hate money for money's sake, you have to have money. And he says that the highest spiritual level, which the Lubavitcher Rebbe also talked about, was having money and having total faith in Hashem. And that brings you to a place of real expanded consciousness. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was very into people having the test of wealth. And you might think, well, okay, Chabad needs a lot of money, so we need a lot of wealthy people. Breslov, they're all poor and they're hanging out in the knock-knock bands and whatnot. What money do they need?
Lev Levayev?
Lev Levayev. I'm not going to tell that story if you're here. I'll save it for another time. Maybe, we'll see. So, for the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it wasn't about the money. There was the famous Purim, where the Rebbe said, now is an auspicious time, a Zman Mesugal. Anybody who wants to be wealthy, raise your hand. And there were 3 people that raised their hand, and they became billionaires. And the Rebbe said, all of you should have raised your hands. And not because the Rebbe wanted everybody to be a billionaire, but because the Rebbe wanted everybody to have the test of wealth. And the test of poverty is you have nothing, so you turn to Hashem and you say, Hashem, I can't afford to pay for whatever, and I'm going to have faith that you're going to figure it out. The test of wealth is that I can afford to pay for everything, and still I'm going to turn to you as if I have nothing. And that's the real challenge. And it's also a challenge to have the taste of life when you have an incredible amount of money. Because here we're enjoying the sushi that's free, which they're more than happy to give to us. We show up here, they give us sushi. Usually the ladies that start the class half an hour before they finish all the sushi before we get here. So we're enjoying it, but imagine you could buy all the sushi you wanted in the world. I'll just order a whole table of sushi. The free sushi might not be, I don't know, we'll find out when we get there. Bezat Hashem. It might not be as enjoyable. So that's pretty much what we got up to. We had this great example of Shmuel Hanavi, Shmuel the prophet, of how does he bring Hashem's presence into this world in the most practical way. Here he was, the prophet of the generation, and what did he do? He went around Eretz Yisrael, judging, so that people wouldn't have to come to him. That was it. And also said the scribes that wrote the judgments, their payment would be distributed amongst the scribes around the whole country, and not just in Jerusalem or wherever the capital was at the time. That was Rabbi Nachman saying, Shmuel Navi is bringing down the Torah in action, and this is how he's doing. He cares so much about his fellow Jews that even though he's the prophet and everybody should come to him, he's going to them. That's the ultimate level. And I just loved how you take such a big concept and make it so simple. That's one of the beautiful things about Rabbi Nachman when it happens. It takes a lot of going through the forest till we get there. Okay, so that's more or less where we were, and now I'm going to give you the overview before we start reading from where we left off last week. So we're talking about speech and prayer. This is in the earlier sections. Speech is a key tool for connecting to Hashem. Pure speech, especially in prayer, has the power to fix things both in the physical and spiritual worlds. But for speech to be effective, it has to be clear and holy. So how is speech clear and holy? Through your thoughts. Your thoughts, your kavana, your intention guide your speech. So when your thoughts are pure and focused on Hashem, they make your words pure and powerful and effective. Without proper thoughts, speech loses its strength. So imagine a person curses a lot. I actually read something Just this last Shabbos was about somebody who was waiting for the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So to clarify, when I say the Rebbe, I mean the Lubavitcher Rebbe. When I say Rebbe Nachman, it's Rebbe Nachman. Because for me, if you have to stick me in a box, it's the Chabad box, even though I tried that and it didn't work out so well. But in Shemayim, the Rebbe is going to put the stamp on me and say, no, he's one of mine. But Rabbi Nachman's probably going to be pulling the other direction and say, but look at all the classes he gave in Likutey Moharan, and that should be my problem in the world to come. So there was something that the people were waiting outside to meet the Rebbe for Yechidus, and one guy was cursing, said some curse word that the Rebbe heard through the door. And the Rebbe didn't say anything. And then at the Farbrengen, that Motzei Shabbos or whatever it was, the Rebbe mentioned how he was staring also at the guy that was cursing. He said, that's something that we don't do. We don't use those words because they make our thoughts impure. So the words are important, although I grew up with a lot of cursing. And even though I don't curse in public, I do curse a lot in my office. But I figured since the doors are closed and nobody's there, and most of the time it's in my head because I messed something up. But it's something to work on, even that. So what you think about and wherever your thoughts go, imagine you're thinking about robbing a bank or pornography or, I don't know, all kinds of things. This affects your speech. So he says we have to elevate our speech. And that's the section that we're in now. We're in section Vav. So how do we elevate our speech? When your thoughts are directed towards holiness and your speech is pure, they work together. This creates a perfect vessel to bring divine energy into the world. And Rabbi Nachman explains that pure speech unites with the different aspects of Hashem's presence, symbolized by the divine names like Havaya, which is Yud-Ke, Vav-Ke, arranged in a different way. This means by speaking with intention, you help bring harmony between the spiritual and physical worlds. And how this connects with earlier sections, the earlier sections emphasize that the world is sustained by speech, meaning that Hashem is speaking all the time. If Hashem were to stop speaking and creating the world through his speech, the world would cease to exist at that second. And that holy speech repairs the world. Section Vav teaches how to achieve this holiness by purifying our thoughts and aligning them with our speech. Rabbi Nachman also mentions that distractions, bad thoughts can block the power of speech. In this section, he encourages focusing on Hashem and avoiding negative influences so that your prayers and Torah study can truly elevate you. Simplified takeaway is Rabbi Nachman is teaching that holy speech, like prayer and Torah study, is most powerful when it comes from a place of pure and focused thoughts. When your mind and words are aligned with holiness, you can repair and elevate the world and bring yourself closer to Hashem. So you get the general idea. Okay, so now we're getting back into the lesson. And then I have an explanation of what we're going to read about in just a second. Elevating Malchut to Or Panim. We're going to go a little deeper into that. Okay. V'lechen kedei shenuchal la'alot et ha'malchut le'or panim. So let's take out the chart for a second. Malchut, we're in the middle of Vav. If you go to the beginning of Vav, it says Lifamim shenofel chas v'shalom. So keep going. V'chol ha'chochmot shel ha'akum. And keep going further, ve'lechen. It comes just before that comes shenofel begaluyot shel arba malchuyot. And then it should be ve'lechen. Okay? So that's where we are. Ve'lechen. Ve'lechen is in mine. So it says ve'tzarich lerot lachtoch, because I have the perush here. Ve'lechen kedei shenochal la'alot et ha'malchut le'or panim. So here we have the Sfirot. The Sfirot symbolize spiritual energies, each of them representing a different type of energy. And Malchut is the lowest of the energy. Malchut is like the soil. The soil doesn't give anything of its own, but it has all the nutrients that allows other things to grow. It draws the energy from everything above and allows it to go back up. So we want to take Malchut and we want to elevate it even above Keter to Or Panim. And we're going to do that through our speech and through our thoughts. I guess I'll leave this out for a second. Okay, ולכן כדי שכן נוכל להעלות את המלכות לאור פנים, we want to elevate Malchut to this level of Or Panim, which is the light of Hashem's face. צריך בתחילה לראות, לחתוך ולהבדיל את בחינות המלכות הנ"ל miben arba galuyot. So if we want to elevate the lowest spiritual level to above the highest spiritual level, we have to make sure to cut and to separate the aspect of Malchut, which we mentioned above, that's in the 4 exiles. The 4 exiles we mentioned before, where I think the order was Bavel, Midian, Rome, and what were the 4 of them? You remember? Yavan, thank you very much, in Greece. So, meaning that the different exiles that the Jewish people were in. We're going to take Malchut, which is in a sense in exile, and we're going to elevate it. So let's go into that before I continue, and then I think it'll make more sense. So Malchut, if we look at the chart over here, Malchut represents kingship, receptivity, the lowest of the 10 sefirot. In spiritual terms, this is the physical world. All of this thought and speech, but this comes to action. Malchut is the one that we actually take into this world. Our ability to take Hashem's blessings and bring them into action. Example, Malchut is like the soil that receives the seeds. It doesn't generate its own light, but channels and expresses what it receives from higher sources. So all this energy comes down to Malchut. What is Or Panim? It's literally the light of the face, meaning Hashem's face. When Hashem's divine light is revealed in the most direct and full way. That's, for example, when you're dancing for joy. When you reach a place where you're totally connected to Hashem through Torah and mitzvot, and it's this light coming into you, and it's being sent back up expressed through you through joy, and an intimate connection with Hashem. That contrasts with Or HaAchorayim, which is the light of the back, which you talked about before, which would be negative energy that's coming in and giving you sustenance. So it's an interesting thing that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wanted to take people, for example, that were artists or that were musicians who come to the Rebbe and say, now in Baal Tshuva, now that I'm religious, I shouldn't be playing punk rock music anymore. And the Rebbe would say, no, you still play punk rock music, but you need to elevate it. You need to bring it to a higher place. And that was the Chabad approach. That was really taking Malchut in the most serious way. I don't know what Rabbi Nachman, I guess Rabbi Nachman would just be like, don't let yourself get down. Keep yourself on a high vibration, a high elevation. So that's Or Panim. We want to elevate whatever we have to this highest place. Or Panim is like sunlight on a clear day, warming and illuminating everything fully, while Or HaCharayim is like light shining through a dense fog. So what's the relationship between Malchut, which is the lowest of the Sfirot, and Or Panim, which is Hashem's light shining into us to the point where we're joyous? Malchut, the lowest level, often experiences a sense of separation or concealment of Hashem's presence. It needs to be elevated to connect to the higher revealed light of Or Panim. So everybody has Malchut, because everyone has some type of, the word agency is like one of these fancy words, has the ability to do things. Everybody has the ability to make a decision. For example, you decided you're coming to this class, I decided I'm giving this class, people are watching this class. All of that is connected to Malchut, because we're using our ability to basically be a king over ourselves to do something. And we're using the Malchut, we're now elevating the Malchut by taking it to a class of Torah and learning Torah. If we took it to, a disco or a nightclub just to get high on drugs and be in all the music atmosphere, that would be still Malchut, but not Malchut being elevated. That would be Malchut being drawn to the negative side. So this elevation represents taking what feels mundane and disconnected and lifting it to holiness and divine clarity. And how do we elevate Malchut to Or Panim? Through holy speech. Malchut connects to speech. Why is Malchut connected to speech? Because how does a king rule? A king doesn't actually do anything himself. The king speaks, and the speech of a king is called dabar. So it comes from dibur, from speech. Dabar is the speech of a king. So the king is the ultimate level of Malchut, because the king is sitting there at the top of the pyramid. The king gives an order, and everybody down the line follows what the king says. So that's through speech. So we, in the sense, have the same thing. And we sanctify our words through prayer, Torah study, and uplifting others. When we do that, we elevate Malchut. Through joy and gratitude, by focusing on Hashem's goodness and approaching life with joy, we transform feelings of distance into closeness. So distance is Ora Chorayim, the backlight, and Ora Panim is the front light. Through consciousness of Hashem's presence, recognizing that everything, even in the physical world, is part of Hashem's divine light, it elevates Malchut. Example, when you say a heartfelt blessing over food, you're taking something physical, Malchut, and connecting it to Hashem's revealed light, or Panim. Well, I think the ultimate is the prayer after you go to the bathroom. I mean, we couldn't live if we couldn't go to the bathroom. Here we come out of the bathroom and say, Hashem, thank you for allowing me to have such a basic, simple thing. You know, it's something that everybody would take for granted until, God forbid, you couldn't. And there are people that can't, and then they die, or they have to have interventions. So the most basic thing is when we thank Hashem for especially something on such a low level, then we're really elevating Malchut to Or Panim. In davening, when you focus on the meaning of the words, you're elevating your speech to which is Malchut, and connecting it to Hashem's light, which is Or Panim. In daily actions, any act done with holy intention, giving charity, speaking kindly, lifts the physical, which is Malchut, into the spiritual, revealing Hashem's light. By transforming struggles, when you encounter difficulty and respond by turning to Hashem with faith, you elevate the concealment, or HaChorayim, into revelation, or Panim. See, it's making sense, yeah? Okay. Why is it important? Elevating Malchut, or Panim, is the essence of our purpose in this world. To reveal Hashem's presence even in the most hidden places and align the physical with the spiritual. It reflects our role in creation to take what is below and to connect it to above. Okay. So I think that now brings us, gives some clarity to the whole lesson. That's why I wanted to go through all of this. Okay, so now we're going to go back to how do we elevate Malchut? We do it by separating it from the 4 exiles, meaning think of the furthest place you could be from this lesson and elevating that. That's how you elevate Malchut. Ula alota misham, and to elevate it from there. Ve'ikar aliyata hu al yedei b'bchinot achesed. And what is the main way that we elevate Malchut? We do it through chesed, kindness, kifshuto, in the simplest way. When a person does chesed with their friend, b'bchinat hakatuv, this is what it's written in Yeshayahu, v'huchan b'chesed kisei. How is Hashem's throne established? It's established through chesed, v'dershu b'tikunei hazor, and it's explained in the tikunei hazor on pasuk zeh regarding this verse, she'al yedei chesed tukam sfirat ha-malchut she'ah shechina b'bchinat hakatuv kitzru lefi chesed. So it says in tikunei hazor regarding this verse that chesed was established through the sphira of Malchut, through the attribute of Malchut, which is the Shechina. The Shechina, we've talked about it many times. You're here in the room so you can see it. Imagine the light is Hashem's light, but what we see on the table is the Shechina. It's directly connected to Hashem. It's not Hashem, but it's what we can see in this world. We're not capable of seeing what's beyond this world on the table. So Malchut is the level of the Shechina. As it says, kitzru lefi chesed, she'al yedei chesed, kotzrim v'chotchim et hadalet. So this is the first hint we've had to the beginning of the lesson. That through chesed, we cut. We're harvesting the garden of knives. We're cutting the garden of knives. And how are we doing it? We're doing it through chesed. Chesed cuts through the daled. Daled is the level of Malchut, meaning, let's just take the simplest thing. Let's say you see somebody in the shuk, and the guy looks really depressed. And you say, what's going on? And he says, listen, I don't have any money for food. I've spent everything I have, I don't have any money for food. And you give him 50 shekels and you say, here, go get yourself a shawarma. He says, wow, you don't know, you really changed, you saved my life. And you're like, for me, you give him 50 shekels, it's no big deal. Or maybe it is a big deal, but whatever it is, you gave it to him. That's exactly what he's talking about here. How do we establish Hashem's throne? We do it through chesed. And what does chesed do? It cuts through all of the noise and the exile, and it elevates malchut. So an action like that is elevating malchut in the ultimate way, and especially if you do it with a smile and even empathy. You say, hi, I know exactly what it's like because I've been there before, and it's really hard, but don't give up. Here you've got 50 shekels, now you got a meal, and Be'ezrat Hashem you'll have a lot more. So now you're just adding more to Hashem's throne. You're establishing chesed, malchut, or chesed, which is malchut even more. Shehi bechinat malchut hamavdilin ota mehem umaalim ota el bechinat o hapanim. So this is the malchut. When we do an act of chesed, we're elevating malchut. We're cutting it away from where it could be stuck, and we're elevating it to or panim, which is Hashem's face shining at us. So imagine a person, I many times have a very serious face, just my nature. And my wife is like, why don't you smile? And I go, smile. And I'll smile like this. She said, oh, that's nice. Why don't you do that more often? So sometimes I'll come walking in the house like this. She's like, oh, what a nice smile. But I'm just putting it on because, makes her happy. It's a good thing to do, but it doesn't come that naturally. My nature is just to be tachlis and serious. And so when a person goes from very serious to a big smile, that's or panim. You're seeing the light shining out to the person. So imagine, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, didn't smile at a lot of people. You see a lot of the pictures, it's very serious in all the pictures. Every now and then they catch the Rebbe smiling and take a picture of him. So there were two interpretations of that. If you were close to the Rebbe and the Rebbe smiled at you, it was okay. But if the Rebbe smiled at you and you weren't like his personal friend, then it was a bad thing. But imagine the Rebbe is smiling because he's really happy. You gave him a good report. The Rebbe always wanted reports. People would always write to the Rebbe and say, this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad. The Rebbe would say, why don't you tell me something good? Why don't you tell me, you went all around Eretz Yisrael and reported on all the activities of the Shluchim in Eretz Yisrael, and you didn't have one good thing to say. So the Rebbe always wanted people to write good things. So imagine you go to the Rebbe now, you wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, I read your letter, it was really good. He smiles at you. And now imagine Hashem is smiling at you, even more so. Which is, by the way, why we have the tzaddikim, like the Rebbe and Moshe Rabbeinu. V'yaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdo. We say it every day in the song by the sea. We have to believe in Hashem and also Moshe, his servant. Meaning all the tzaddikim, because all the tzaddikim are below Moshe. Moshe was the ultimate tzaddik. What does that mean? That means that the tzaddikim, even though they're human beings and they're physically in this world, they're spiritually disconnected from this world. Even if they're involved in mundane things like business, you have, who was the Belzer Rebbe? I think it was Rokeach. I think that was his last name. One of the Rebbes, whose last name was Rokeach, Simcha Bunim, I don't remember which one it was. And so you have people that were involved in physical things. Of course, all the rabbis in the Gemara, they all had professions. They were tanners, they were sandlerim, they were carpenters, all kinds of things. You don't have like today. I don't think did you have anyone you can remember in the Talmud that only sat and learned all day?
He was very poor, so presumably he probably didn't have a job.
That'd be interesting. I wonder if there is here, if David is listening. He sends me a message afterwards in Hebrew, only in Hebrew. I was a student in high school, so now I remember years ago I would come back every time to Israel. I would stay with him in the beginning, and we would be on a bus. And back then, there was no internet. Everybody just had radio. So you hear dee, 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 and then Chachot, whatever it was, from Chachot Yisrael or whatever they called it. And he would say to me, "Nu, you understand the news?" And I'd say, "Sometimes I understand a little bit." And every trip I understood more and more and more, till finally I understood all the news. And Then at some point just started writing to me in Hebrew. Okay, so it's good to get distracted because then it keeps us focused on the text. I keep my finger where we were. So we're elevating, we have to separate and elevate. And we're doing it through chesed, and we're bringing it to the light of the face. Hashem's light, which is shining at us. And so I gave the example of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Imagine he was happy and shining, and his face was shining, or your parents, if your parents are capable of being happy. Not everybody has parents that are capable of being happy, but when they're not on drugs or drunk. And so imagine your parent is smiling at you, or your spouse is smiling at you, or somebody that you love, appreciate you, is smiling at you, so all the more so Hashem is smiling at you. Why is Hashem smiling at you? Because you saw this guy suffering, you went out of your way, you said a kind word, you gave him 50 shekels so you could eat, and then Hashem says, this is why I created the world. For that moment. And one of the things that Reb Shalom, who was my teacher, passed away 7 years ago, he used to say, Hashem created the whole world, and when Hashem created the world, he had you in mind. Which really logically makes sense. Like even if you're a total atheist and don't believe in God, you know that if you believe in the Big Bang, everything had to happen in order for you to be born. So it means the same thing. And so he says, Hashem had you in mind, so try to live up to what Hashem had in mind for you in your lifetime. Because all of creation happened so that you could be who you are. And when you do an act of kindness for your fellow Jew, or anybody, but all the more so for your fellow Jew, you are doing what Hashem created the world for and created you for. V'alken Avraham ayach ish chesed. Avraham was the ultimate example of chesed. Kamo shekatuv chesed la'Avraham, as it's written in Micha, this is the proof text for it, that chesed, Avraham was for chesed. Shaya mishtadem tamid la'asot chesed kedei la'alot b'chinat ha'malchut mehem. He always tried to do chesed, acts of kindness, in order to elevate malchut from them. And because I have the perush here, I know what from them is. Me'arbat amalchuyot shel sitra achra, from the 4 kingships of the evil energy or the negative energy in the world. Ba'avodat chesed shelo. He wanted to elevate them to his level of chesed. V'an ken radaf Avraham achar ha'arba'a melachim. And that's why Avraham chased after the 4 kings. Shemihem shoash shel arba'at melachim, that the root of the 4 kings, shekamu achar kach al Yisrael ba'arba galuyot, that as a result of them, they were the 4 exiles of the Jewish people, kedei lachniam, in order to subjugate them, b'bchinat ma'aseh avot siman levanim. And this is the aspect of the actions of our forefathers are a sign for us, meaning the way that Avraham behaved is how we're supposed to behave. So when we see how our forefathers dealt with their problems and how they lived their lives, that was a sign for us and how we're supposed to do it as well. So if Avraham was going after, Avraham was going into the darkest places in the world and looking to elevate them with kindness. Shehem amelachim vegaluyot agashmiot. These were the physical kingships and physical exiles. B'bchinat ha'arba malchuyot t'sitra achra. These are the 4 kingships of the negative energy in the world. Ki kol kocham hu mechimat sheyeshnam dalad malchuyot b'sitra achra. Because all of their power comes because there's these 4 kingships of the negative energy. Hayoneket me'ot daled de kedusha, that draw its sustenance from the letter daled of holiness, and daled represents malchut. So we have malchut. Malchut has all this potential. It's bringing down all the spiritual energy, and it comes down to us when we can do something with it. And if we're not using it for holiness and we're not using it for the proper purposes, so then the Putin and Trump get to draw their energy from us, in a sense, or even Hamas, God forbid. So it's an interesting thing that after October 7th, a lot of people reconnected with Judaism, even more so than during Corona. During Corona, there were a lot of people that were locked at home. I chose not to participate in Corona, so I was the only person in the street. the police offered to arrest me several times, but there were people that decided to listen to the rules and stay at home. And so they became very depressed. And there were people that discovered, davening and all of that. But although more so after October 7th, I think more people. My test case is my daughter Shuvi, who is actually coming this Shabbos. She lives in Tel Aviv now, in a midrash there. And since she was a teenager, she was doing Mivtza Neshek, which over there in the Shuk. Handing out Neshek is a gun, but it also means Nerot Shabbat Kodesh, the candles for the Holy Shabbos. So she would sit there, All of my 3 older daughters did this. I think maybe even Abigail did it for a while. It would be interesting if she does it again. So they go out and they hand out candles with the Shabbos times. It works great in the Shuk, but you moved to Tel Aviv, wow. And she moved there before October 7th, so there was all this tension. They don't want hadata, so they call it in Hebrew. They don't want religious influence in Tel Aviv. Can't have a mechitza outside on Yom Kippur, God forbid, that people should be separate, even though they can choose to stand wherever they want. So she told me, the first few weeks, people didn't want to take candles from her. People were spitting in her direction. People were cursing her. And so she said to me, what am I supposed to do? So the advice that I gave her was, if somebody didn't want a candle, bless them that next time they'll want a candle. And you just say, I bless you, next time you'll want a candle. I don't know if she did it, but at least it made her feel better. I asked her after October 7th, how did it go? She started with 100 candles. She said within 5 minutes they were gone. And nobody said anything bad, and everybody thanked her. So that's elevating Malchut, and that's taking it out of the Sitra Achra. That's taking it out of the negative energy. When the same Malchut that existed for taking the candles was used for cursing the person that was handing out the candles, that's feeding the negative energy. And when they take the candles, that's restoring the positive energy and elevating Malchut. And that's where all of the energy of the nation, the non-Jewish nations, that's where they receive their energy from. Yoneket me'ot daled kedusha. Shehi hashchina shenafla elahim. That's the Shechina that fell into the non-Jewish nations. Ula Avraham shaya ish hachesed haya lo et hakoach la'alot et hamalchut kedusha mehem ubeze sagar yanikatam vehichniam. Avraham, who was the man of chesed, was essentially embodied chesed, was able to go into the non-Jewish nations and suck their energy away and subjugate them. And now he's going to give an example, and that's where we're going to stop. Ki nitbe'er le'il, as it was explained above in Ot Daled in section 4, shekadei liskot lechokhmat ta'ah, in order to reach the lower level of wisdom, shehi sfirat malchut, which is connected to malchut, tzarich liot soneh beta. Person has to hate money for money's sake, the desire for money, not money itself. Shazo ha'ita midat Avraham. This was the attribute of Avraham. Ki haya soneh mamon. Avraham hated money. Ki ma'as mamon stom. He hated the money of stom. Kamosha katuv, as is written, she'Avraham amar lemelech stom le'achar she'itziloto ve'et rechusho. That Avraham said to the king of Stom, who saved the king and saved all of his possessions, this is in Bereshit, im mechut ve'ad sroch nal v'chulei. I won't take even a thread or a shoelace. Im ekach mikol asher lecha. If I were to take anything from you, velo tomar, or I guess it means, God forbid I should take anything from you, velo tomar ani ha'sharti et Avraham, that you won't be able to say, I am the one that made Avraham wealthy. Meaning that if Avraham took all the money from Stom, because he saved the king of Stom, and the king said, well, you saved my life, here, take everything, then everybody would say, well, Avraham became wealthy because of Stom. No, Avraham didn't want 1 shekel from Stom. And that's how Avraham fixed Malchut in that situation, because he was the man of compassion, because he could elevate it from the 4 exiles of the 4 different kingships, 4 kingdoms, like he did, and he fought the 4 kings that were from the negative energy, until ve'malach aleim, until he subjugated them and ruled over them. V'gam hayasoneh betza, and even though he had essentially all the Bitcoin in the world, he still hated money, the desire for money. V'lachen, and therefore yachal liskot lesechel shel chokhmatata, and then he could merit to have the lower level of wisdom, meaning that he could understand and explain Hashem in simple words that everybody could understand. She'atanai liskot ba hu liot soneh betza, that the condition in order to be able to explain Hashem in the simplest words is to not be attached to the material world. Okay, that's where we're stopping for today. Continue next week. Bezat Hashem, I have a very short story of Reb Zusha. I hope Yael is still around. Shalom to Ron and to Chaya that joined us. Okay, as you know, in the early days of the Hasidim and the Misnagdim, there was this tension. They didn't get along so well. They don't have that problem anymore. I think nobody cares about Misnagdim and Hasidim anymore. Just all kinds of jokes on both sides. Because they had bigger problems. It's funny, they had bigger problems because the Reform movement came along, and now there's bigger problems because nobody's worried about the Reform movement anymore. Now they're worried about total assimilation. Nobody cares about, the previous problems. Those are not even an issue anymore. Okay, so there was this tension. Reb Zusha would travel around, as was his custom. He would wander amongst the Jewish people. And why was Reb Zusha doing this? And his brother Rebbe Leimach also did this, to elevate the Shekhinah. Meaning, just exactly what we've been learning here, that the Shekhinah, the power of making decisions, is there in the exile. And somebody could just be depressed all the time. And somebody can even be learning Torah and putting on 15 pairs of tefillin and still be depressed all the time and not be serving Hashem with joy. And so Reb Zusha would go around really and just have conversations with people, and who knows who he would meet and what he would be able to do. So one day he comes to an inn, and there's this renowned Torah scholar, this big rabbi sitting there, and the scholar is totally engrossed in his sefer. And Reb Zusha, who looks very simple, probably was missing some teeth, probably his clothes were ripped. He was very, very simple and poor. He comes over to the Torah scholar and he says to him, "What are you learning?" And the guy says, "Can't you see that I'm studying? Get out of here. Leave me alone." So Reb Zusha says, "I'm sorry." And he walks away. And at some point, the scholar encountered something that he couldn't understand in the Talmud, and there was nobody else around to ask. So he looks over at Reb Zusha, and Zusha says, "Would you like Zusha to help?" And he thinks, well, this is a really simple Jew. How could he even help me? I'm a great scholar, and he's probably one of those crazy Hasidim. What can he do for me? And Zusha gives him a deep and profound explanation, explaining the passage and clarifying it for him. And the scholar realized that beneath Zusha's clothes and the way that he looks was a real scholar and a tzaddik, and he apologized for the way that he treated Reb Zusha before. And Reb Zusha said, every person has their unique way of connecting with Hashem. You do it through learning all day, and I do it by being simple and humble, and both paths lead to the same truth. So I love this little story of Reb Zusha, that you can be the Torah scholar and I can be the guy who just walks around trying to make Jews happy, and both of them are equal paths in serving Hashem. Okay, I don't know how many more Reb Zusha stories I'm going to find, but I'm doing pretty good so far. Maybe there's thousands of them, I don't know. It's all up to ChatGPT finds them for me, so I put it in there, I say find me a Reb Zusha story that we don't have yet. And it shows me the same story every time. I said, nope, find me another one. Then it goes out into the big internet and finds me stories. And then I tell them here. Okay.